Ah, yeah, PacMan. Best practices for building Neos and Flow packages. So what can you expect from this talk? This talk is not something like a wonder recipe where we can tell you all the magical ingredients to magically make your packages perfect forever. But we'll talk about that later. First of all, a short introduction. Yeah. That's me, 8-bit pixelated, according to the talk. My name is Florian Weiss. I distribute under the name Weisheit in Wien. And I also work on skill display. This is for showing skills of persons on a web-based platform. We are during our second beta in the second year now, so it is still under development. Accompanying me is a great guy.
Yeah, so my name is Dmitri. As you've probably learned from yesterday, I work in the St. Philaret's Christian Institute. And yeah, I don't have a lot more information to add to what you already know about me. So go ahead, Florian.
OK, I would say let's get started.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who of you knows this guy?
Me.
No one, really, no one. That's Billy Mitchell. And Billy Mitchell is the first one who managed to play a perfect Pac-Man game. It's 3,333,360 points. You could say Billy Mitchell is like the. You could say Billy Mitchell is the Sebastian Kurfürst of Pac-Man, who writes neo-Zillion lines of great code, as we all know. We also had a presentation where he proves that. So the interesting thing is, you can't win Pac-Man, actually. That's a bit of a problem. Because eventually, when you get to the last level, the memory is exhausted, the screen will tear in half, and you actually can't win. You can eat the dots that you see, and eventually the ghosts will eat you, and you lose. That's bad. You can play a perfect game, but you can't win Pac-Man, actually. Also, our next problem is we can't write perfect Neos packages. If you think of a perfect package, that would be something that you write, that lasts forever, that everyone loves, that's well documented, it's easy to get, it's easy to build into everything you have. That's just not true, and it's hardly possible. The good news is, we can optimize the packages. So what can we do to make out, to get an optimal performance of our packages? First of all, to achieve this, I'll tell you something about the Playfield. How is this game played? Whenever you see a sherry, cherries are obviously great in Pac-Man. If you eat them, you get a lot of points. You increase your package score. So whenever you see a sherry, it is something that we recommend, that we like, that we know from experience that worked well. Whenever you see a ghost, it doesn't mean you shouldn't definitely do it, but it means we ourselves had some problems in our experience with working that way, and we learned the hard way that it was, at least for us, not ideally the way to go. OK.
Does anyone have a remote control with a better battery, perhaps?
That would be interesting. I'm your remote controller. Ah, you're my remote controller.
No, I'm your remote controller.
Oh, great. Next, please. Oh, that works well. So you didn't even press something, did you?
Yeah, that's the key.
Oh, great. Thank you. OK, so the classic. I'm going to hold on to this anyways because it's great to be able to click.
You can point at Florian and actually press a button and
So if you think of the classic package definition as it is in WordPress, Joomla, etc., it really often is a one-size-fits-all approach. So what you get is, thank you, really big extension, which is perhaps sometimes too big for your taste. And you have to adapt and tailor and hammer around until it really fits you. So the one-size-fits-all approach is sometimes hard because you spend very much time with actually adapting a package that does too much for your taste down to your needs. So We definitely totally planned this. So a ghost, in our opinion, is ready-to-use extensions that can be twisted to fit. We're speaking from experience there because at first we wanted to do a news package, and we pondered what do we put into a news package. Then we ended up with things we don't really need in every project, and we tinkered and tailored and adapted and adapted. And in the end, what you actually got was as a file listable. This is the end result, but we will talk about that later. Dmitri will talk about that in modularization. So, but what you ideally want to have are building blocks with basic things that you can fit together and adapt to your needs further, if you need so, in your side package, to bring something great together. So our best practice is try to make building bricks instead of monolithic, ready-to-use extensions. This worked well for us so far. Okay, let's look at the facts. We have over 400 Neos packages, and I'm very, very happy to say that we have now a common home for them with the new homepage. Thank you very much, guys. That's really cool of you. You can search them under this URL that we entered to the talk during the course of the event, because I haven't seen the homepage before either, so I didn't know what awaits me. But I think it's great that you have a common ground to start from now. Could we? Yeah, who builds those packages? I already spoiled it. You. And let me say, you are awesome. Who in this room actually did build a package and committed to the common population of Neos land? 2, 4. Ah, that's quite a lot of people. Thank you, guys. You're great.
I think.
You're awesome. Thank you. So, what about the other ones? You're sitting there and asking, hey, what about me? I'm also awesome. Yes, you are. And to join the ranks of the people who already released the package, we would like to give you a little guideline and a little info. So, is there something to be afraid of? No, there's nothing to be afraid of. To start, you don't need to be a PHP wizard. Embrace the power of typoscript 2, embrace its abilities. For a starting point, remember the talk of Sebastian, who did show what you can do, the extensibility talk of Christian. It's really a great starting point, and even without touching PHP, you can do so much in Neos. Sometimes I get afraid. I had a package where I did very much stuff with Neos, and I asked Christian on Slack, Christian, is this still all right? I'm feeling like someone who uses Visual Basic for applications in excess now to do things that were never intended. But he said with typoscript 2, it's pretty okay. So there's very much you can do with typoscript 2. Use it to your advantage. So how would you start? Actually, people who did not build packages, who did build a side package, a personal side package, yes? Okay? Yeah. So there's a lot of people who did build side packages. I don't know why we did skip there. Could you go back one slide, please? Thank you. So there's a lot of people who did build side packages already. And to do this, you use basic typoscript 2 and node types. You extend these node types. You can do all the good stuff with node types. The next step would be logical, what you normally need afterwards, are custom typoscript objects and EEL helpers. So that might be the next thing you want to look into. Generally, you might want to have a look at the extensibility talk of Christian and Sebastian to get an idea where you can tap into, and especially where you can tap into without breaking things in the core. Okay, eventually this will happen. This happens to me a lot. Error 112 in integrator, facepalm. Do you want to continue? Sometimes your spirit goes down while developing because you just have this thing that should be simply solvable and you just can't make it out. There are certain points where other people will help you out. So just remember them. Discuss IO, Slack, read the docs, packages from other people, and of course the source code of Neos. We heard a lot about that. We'll link that up in the slides so you can use it directly to jump to it to get help. Okay, so having told all that, what is actually the reason to use packages? We talked about building blocks, so when would you use the one, when would you use the other? To sum it up in one sentence, we would say, be able to reuse a specific thing your package does very well. Listable comes to mind. And with that, I want to pass on to Dmitri for
Oops, that's
a huge
too far.
jump in our slides.
I'll handle it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Florian. While I'm scrolling back for my slides, I can also say that Florian in his last...
Oh, stop.
Okay, leave it here. I just try to handle it. No, I mean... it batches my inputs and replays them asynchronously. So I'll do like this, yeah? Okay, and just take it away from me so I don't break anything. So Florian in his last months probably has written more lines of PHP code than I have ever in my 2 years of my NEOS career. And that may make you ask a question like, what am I doing here to talk about creating packages? But the good story here is that you can actually do quite a lot without PHP in NEOS. And, but that's not the main point. But I'll try to talk about more abstract things and more kind of universal principles and rules that I got from my experience, also as a JavaScript developer, that it doesn't really matter when it comes to real things about being a programmer or developer. It's not the language itself, but usually the high-level principles and ideas that you can get from it. So if you move to the next slide. So we saw like guy in great pants in Florian's part. Now we trimmed it a bit to custom fit some nice-looking guy. And in NEOS, what it actually allows you to do is not to take some third-party huge extension pants or package and trying to adjust it to your customers' needs and to your project. That's like sometimes it's feels tempting that you have something that does almost like what your whole project needs. So you just integrate it and the whole project is done. And you go ahead and then you see, oh, perhaps I need a small adjustment here. You try to hack into it, then you submit a pull request to an author. He wouldn't reply for a few months, perhaps. And you're basically screwed. And that is not the coolest way to go. Usually with NEOS, don't start with searching for something really, really big. And in general, when you are developing your code, at some point, it makes sense to break it up and extract some single-purpose functionality out of your main side package or out of your main code to reuse it across the projects. Because the complexity of maintaining some bunch of code grows as the code grows itself. So being modular is a buzzword today as well. And that's actually a great thing, but I always try to try to argue with some buzz things. Modularity actually, if it's done prematurely, like without really thinking, without understanding what's the intent of the code that you're extracting and putting into a module, it will bite you in the ass just as hard as a monolith code. And example of that may be the NPM ecosystem, which I really love and adore. And there are actually a lot of things you can learn from it and be inspired by like single-line modules, actually. And there's one particular module that probably every even known JavaScript developer is familiar with. Yeah, this one. Like, who knows what this is, actually, what this does? Yeah, so quite a lot of people for PHP conference. I doubt that JavaScript developers know about any other PHP module on packages as much as you know about this one. And yeah, this is the thing that broke the whole internet recently when it got pulled by some pissed off developer. The good news is that you can pull off packages from Packagist now very easily. I tried it last night. Don't worry, it was not listable. Something else. Yeah, and NPM guys actually solved this problem that you can no longer pull your package from NPM repository 24 hours after you publish it. For Packagist, it's not solved yet, so stay calm. But the thing is that when you are relying, when you're going the modular way and when you are relying on third-party stuff, you should really consider the risks, consider what you do, like when the maintainer of the package takes a vacation and won't fix your urgent bug fix, for example. Would you fork this package and continue maintenance yourself? That's also a possibility. But I don't want to discourage you from this, just to always keep in mind when you hear some buzz, like do things this way and do this thing that way. Remember, there's always something where you really need to strike a balance, you know, between one buzz and another. And that's to share my advice how I work with Neo's code. I have one pile of mess, which is called a side package, about which I don't really care much about the quality of what is in there. I mean, it's a project, usually a website, that would be developed for a month and then would live on, have some maintenance, and so on. But I don't reuse the code that is there a lot. But over time, I see some pattern across the projects that there's one little thing that actually takes quite some time to get right, you know? And that does one that has some purpose that would be make sense to that's needed across multiple projects. And so in this case, I take it out, put it into a separate repository, version it, like do semantic versioning and document it and so on. So I don't have to struggle myself remembering what this package actually does. And it goes not only for small packages, but for the big ones as well. But still, even your big package has to answer, you really have to understand the intent of this, of your package. Take, for example, the new blog on our website, on a new website. Aske built it. And he asked me, like, hey, do you know of any good news package we have on, like, for Neos? And I thought, like, yeah, I know about a dozen of packages, but do we really need a news package for our blog? I mean, it's just listing of things, basically. So I suggested to let him try Listable, yeah, the buzzword of this conference. I'm really embarrassed by Sebastian talking about it all the time, but I have to continue talking about it again because it illustrates the point really well. It's, I think, the idea that you have a concern of listing things, and it really has nothing to do with what you list, actually, as long as it's a node. I don't really care what fields I need, like my items need. Is it news, is it a blog, or is it anything else you can imagine, like a directory of people, or, I don't know, some architecture like Dominique has there. So you see it's just like, I don't know, 15 lines of code together with cache configuration. And putting it into a separate package from the side package actually doesn't really make any sense. So is it modular in this case? The blog itself is not modular. It's a monolith with the side package. And it makes perfect sense to leave it this way for, for eternity, probably. But the logic of listing things is actually quite complex. And so we take it out. And another example is, would you want to provide like you have all those fancy node types that you create in your, while you're making different sites, and you think that's all of that might be reusable at some point. So let's just put it into some shared package. And that perhaps is also not a really good idea, because when you want one specific node type, like for example, U2B node type, or on some project, you don't want to include all of them and then disable them and configure, and especially think about versioning when you have like 10 projects depend on it, like your own projects, and you need to update all of them just for the sake of something and really hope nothing breaks. That's really hard. So like if you have a clean intent in mind again, like all nodes for Zarp Foundation or Twitter Bootstrap, that for me sounds like a good intent, or just a U2B node, or some nodes for typical blog like that you use. Stuff like that would be okay. So keep that in mind. It's another example of modularity. And now we are finally done with modular part. Let Florian rock on the foundations of Neo's development on typoscript. He didn't let me do this part because I wouldn't stop like for an hour, actually, if I was doing it. So go ahead, Florian.
I would let you do this part, but you prevented me from because you said you would talk for hours and hours because you love typoscript so much, which is actually true. And you would be the better person to talk about typoscript, that's obvious. But then again, you would be talking for a very long time. So let's just skim over TypoScript best practices. We've heard a lot from Sebastian again. Yes, great, please, the next slide. And what I want to highlight is declarative templating versus imperative templating. And let's just see two examples. The first one is imperative templating. What do these lines of code say? You look at them, and it's a for loop, so you loop through something to do something else, but it's not very defined. I mean, obviously, a lot of people do it in the fluid templates. I do it from time to time, but it doesn't say anything about the content that is going to be rendered. When you go to the other example, declarative templating, you can also do this, the same example, with the help of a typoscript collection. So there are two advantages there. First of all, you're defining that you have a collection. So I'm going to have a bunch of things that I want to have rendered. And you can declare which item renderer you want to use to display this, the items and the elements of this collection. So this says much more about what will happen afterwards. Also, there's a second advantage to this. It avoids putting too much logic into Fluid, which is normally not a problem if you have small templates. But if you put every logic into Fluid, and we actually heard today that other people believe it to be an antipattern, and that's an interesting point of view. I agree to an extent, definitely. So if you avoid putting too much logic into Fluid, you get cleaner templates and they're better maintainable. So I don't say don't do it, just take care when you put the logic there. And try to use TS2 whenever possible. Okay, something else. We did hear about inheritance. So I guess after Sebastian's talk, everyone does know what inheritance is about in node types. I guess most of you have done it before because you want to extend your page object, because you want to extend a content object, image object, whatever. And there's something that I call inheritance chains versus mixins. So let's take a look at the first example. It's inheritance chains. You start with something, like a green ghost. Then it becomes a fox ghost, and afterwards it's a fox, and you changed it so many times that if you touch it at one point, you will screw up the end result because there's so much inheritance. Let's look at a code example for that. You need a special page, and the super type is a classic Neos page element. And you have a new property that says meta description, and you want it to be a string. Now, later you realize, I could need another page type. It's the extra special page. And the extra special page does not only need the meta description, but also a Twitter card type. This should also be a string. Now what you did create with that is an inheritance chain. So whenever you change the parent object, your child objects change with that. In this example, it's not very problematic because obviously, I mean, it's not that many lines of code. You would recognize it and you could adapt accordingly. But imagine you have this distributed over a lot of packages. For example, you have the classic node types, YAML of Neos, then you have a package above that, and in your side package, you still want to edit the thing that was altered in the other package you imported. That's inheritance chains. Neos has a very nice way of dealing with that in the Neos demo typo3.org package, and that is mixins. I prefer to use mixins over inheritance chains whenever possible, because what you get then is just the possibility to have an extra type from which you can inherit on the first level. So if you have multiple mixins, it doesn't get as confusing because you can just alter the mixins then, and that's a lot easier. And when possible, I prefer to do it this way. Inheritance chains are usually not something you intend to do. It happens, and you have to recheck your code and think, oh, perhaps it would be better if I could use a mixin there. OK, what do we have else? Level 4, get to know Flow. Possible spoiler, who works with Flow on a regular basis? Woo, so many people. OK, I'm not telling you anything new now when I say it's a great and state-of-the-art DDD PHP framework. I really love Flow. I really like to work with it. Sometimes the entry level is a bit hard to get into, honestly, because you want to do something that you think it should be rather easy, but you're banging your head on the documentation and where can I find this? When you actually find it, you think, oh my God, this is a beautiful solution. It makes perfect sense. Why didn't I think of that in advance? But yeah, Flow is a great framework. Try to get to know it. I don't have time to highlight the whole Flow framework now, as 3/4 of the audience know it anyway. That's something you did embrace already, I guess.
Yeah, so I guess this is my part, which is funny again. Me and testing, this is like... so I'm not going to talk about PHP testing. Relax, it's not that bad. Only about some aspects of that in a very narrow scope. So who of you guys do test your complex typoscript objects?
I'm so happy I'm not alone with that.
I mean, at least Neos developers could raise your hands because we do test them in Neos. Oh, OK. Yeah, you're the cool guys. I learned that from you. Actually, when I submitted some typoscript object for Neos source to be included into Neos core, I said, "Hi, you're missing test there. It's like every child knows that you should be adding tests." I thought, even for typoscript objects, yeah, obvious. So time passed, and of course, when I had to do something for the core, I would include that as well. But today, as I'm doing that talk, I thought, how would I be talking about testing in typoscript if like none of my packages actually have any tests for typoscript? So I've written a test for listable package. You can congratulate me on that. It's my first unforced, willful decision to actually write tests myself for my own code without anyone like looking over my shoulder and doing code reviews. Actually, it's quite easy. Here you see we I had time to write only the test for the very simplest use case, just that listable basically works. It's a functional test, and this is the fixture for this test. We try to have the most basic configuration for the listable of the listable object, and we expect that it renders actual HTML. You can look now in the listable package for some more details how to do that if you want to start writing tests for your own typoscript code, and you can see even more examples of that in the Neos code base. Especially the typoscript package itself is very well tested. Why to do that, you would ask? It's just some configuration of some view. But as you see, that typoscript is a lot more now than just some configuration. I mean, there are people who are doing websites completely in typoscript, and I'm totally amazed by that. I still use Fluid for normal templates without logic, but there are people who went further than me. That's amazing. And obviously, if you have such logic, such complex logics as, for example, listable package that has a lot of things, you can limit your test results, you can sort them, you can like output all the class names and everything. And actually, I broke this package, even though it's only a few lines of code, a couple of times already. And some of you guys wrote to me on Slack, does listable actually work? I said, yeah, it works perfectly on my machine. Like, why are you bothering? I have production websites running on it. But then obviously there's some slight use case that I didn't consider. And this is what like tests actually help you to do. So it doesn't obviously make any sense writing tests for your site configuration. But if you have some reusable package that you really rely on that has some logic, like perhaps some flow query operations or something like that, perhaps it has much more sense to test than some random part of your PHP code somewhere down below that's used only once. So don't have prejudices against typoscript itself as a language. Think out of the box. It doesn't matter what language it is. It matters what it does, this piece of code, and like actually how much do you rely on it. Always compare and invest your development resources, invest your patience. We're all lazy people and we all have slight amount of patience. So invest it into your public APIs, into stuff that onto which you rely across your projects. So that's about it. And now, like the most unpleasant part, probably, doing open source. Florian, you have to do it, I'm sorry.
Maintenance.
He's actually really good at that stuff.
So 2D, oh, really? Thank you for, pun intended. Maintenance, yeah. There are a couple of facts that you have to consider when you release a package and best practices. The point being is, most packages are not perfectly maintained because it's hard, it takes up a lot of time, there's a lot of variables to consider, there's a lot of things to do. Let's look at the most important parts. May sound trivial, but fill out composer and packages the info. Actually, this should only say fill out composer info, but oh well. If you're lazy and don't want to write the file yourself, or you have no template for it, init just helps you. It gets you an interactive console in case you didn't know and asks you nice questions, even pre-fills the values you might need. So it is a pretty smooth experience. And think about what you put in the description there. So other people might find it, it gets listed, suddenly there's a marketplace and your package name and description are listed there. So think in advance what you want to put in your composer info. Semantic versioning. I did put the link up there. Try to stick to semantic versioning. So I guess semantic versioning, who of you does it? Oh, not that many people, actually. OK, there are 3 parts. You have a major, minor, and patch part, so 3 parts. The last one you would obviously do when you did bug fix something that is non-breaking. The minor version would be an enhancement that is non-breaking. And please, for the love of everything that is Neos package grade, do create a new major version when you introduce breaking changes. And also document them in your README and how you can fix the breaking changes. That's a very important part. So please do semantic versioning for your packages if you start that way. Package naming. Yeah, we had a slide today that said there are only 2 hard things to do in IT. and package naming is one of them. I can tell you how I like to name my packages. There may be different opinions. But what I like to do is a combination of vendor, context, purpose. So what you actually start with is obviously the vendor, because you're cool, you're important, you wrote it. So the first thing you would put in is your company's name or your coder's name or whatever. The next one is the context. For a package that is for Neos, like providing node types, I would pick Neos. For something that perhaps tinkers with Flow, you could use Flow as namespace, but don't stop there with the name of the framework. I would also use where, for example, the OAuth name. So it's flowpack.oauth2. I consider this good context because it says, okay, Flowpack also already has a hint that it's a Flow package, and if you would introduce even more dots, it would get unnecessarily complicated. So I think OAuth would be a good compromise in that regard. So the second point is context for me, usually. So we have Flowpack, Neos, and the purpose. For some packages, it's really easy and obvious. For example, the front-end login. Everyone can imagine what that package does. Okay. Coding guidelines. Good news. If you're a fan of Flow and you're coding with it, there's a whole great PDF, which I'll link to you there. It's a one-pager, actually. To be honest, if you print it, I think you have to glue it together on some parts, but it's one page in the PDF. And it's really nicely done. It has some hints, some highlighting, and you can easily see the most important coding guidelines of Flow there. Yeah, stick to standards. This is also in the coding guidelines. If you don't have PSR2 and you want to easily introduce that to your projects, and you use phpstorm, it's the easy combination of strong Shift-Alt-L, and when you press those 4 buttons simultaneously, you will get introduced with these curly brackets that you were missing before. Documentation and interaction. I've often seen packages that are awesome, that are really great, that have great thinking behind them. When you look at the code, it reveals to you that the person who wrote this is a really competent and smart guy or girl. Nevertheless, when you only have the code as a comment, it gets pretty hard. So what I love people to do is providing a README. It may sound trivial, but actually even for small packages, which seem simple to you, it helps so much for other users. I got asked at the Typo3 Developer Days Nuremberg for the news package, community news package. We didn't provide a good README, and I got asked certain questions by newbies. How can I install this? How do I use this? How do the node types interact? You don't have to start from scratch each time, so you don't have to explain what typoscript 2 does. There's obviously read the docs for that. But at least explain the parts your package is doing well.
By the way, community news is now a pretty good learning resource, since Florian wrote about 100 pages of documentation for it. So if you're new to TypoScript, go ahead and check it out.
Yeah, if we want to check out how to overdo documentation, check out the new version of Community News. I did go overboard a bit there. But if you're starting with packages and you want to know the interactions and stuff, check out the package and the README. It will be helpful for you. If you're not a newbie, you might just skim to the sections relevant to you. Don't ignore GitHub responses. Usually people are supportive there, they want to improve your package, they have opinions on that. Try to get into discussions, let yourself in, let them be part of the community. You don't have to merge everything, of course, that gets submitted, but at least try to respond. A negative response is better than no response at all, because if you send a response there and you just don't get any answer ever, you feel bad. Try to maintain your package. Yeah, that's hard. We all have packages, or many of us have packages. To maintain them in a state that is up to date and up to par is a hard task. The more packages you write, the more packages you have, the harder it gets. That isn't to say don't release any package if you can't maintain it for 100 years, but it's just to say try to maintain your packages. Try to give them a look here and there and check out what's going on there. Okay, to wrap up. There are two great namespaces. If you never used them, that's because you're not allowed to publish under Flowpack. Flowpack are core team members, and there are packages that the core team members publish. Community, however, is for everyone. And community packages are a great place to start because they're made for collaboration. Dmitri and I actually started with community news because we thought it would be cool to have a news package for the people that are interested. It would be cool for people who want to know how it is done, more as a manual than ready-to-fit extension and ready-to-use extension. And we're happy if people want to participate. Send us your code, send us your info, send us what you think about the package, or start your own package in the community namespace. Contribute.
Yeah, so get out there. Seriously, I already preached about having open by default policy. That's even better. But if you can't get your company to do that, try to find your diamonds, your really nitty-gritty cool things, or just some really elegant solutions to some problems that you are using over and over again. And go ahead, publish them. Ping everyone on Twitter, on Slack. I mean, people are interested in this. I look through the code of almost every published package because I'm really curious regarding typoscript at least, like what people are actually doing. So go ahead, like don't hesitate. Yeah. So.
Okay. So all in all, what we can say to you: remember, the slogan is nothing is. What? Wait, that's not correct.
I told you to fix that one.
It should say nothing is impossible.
Just a second, guys.
Not nothing is possible. Hey, what's going on? Huh?
It's really annoying.
We have to fix that.
You know, we are just preparing slides right before the talk.
I wish we could just edit that in time.
Where is my mouse?
Nothing is possible. Yeah, there's no mouse. There's not anything.
There's no.
Imagine.
Oh, here it is.
Imagine if we just did compile the slides and upload this already. I wish we had this in Neos and could just edit it.
Actually, we do.
Oh, we have. Great. This is actually a Neos extension.
Yeah, but it doesn't fit into the slides.
OK. So you see, it's not hard to do a package. You have some single purpose. You call Dmitri. And there is a package that you can use for presentation.
It's saving anyways. It logged out, obviously. You weren't being
And the impression is a bit spoiled because it's not saving, but actually we did present that out of Neos. So nothing is impossible. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, a couple of error messages to see they are well designed still.